Good day. It is March 28, 2025, not 2024. On the first edit, that was how it was. This is OSU's Turfgrass Team Times. We are back. That means things are starting to grow. This is not where we're seeing any extended periods of ice or snow cover. And we're seeing temperatures actually in the Cleveland area forecast to get up into the 60s next week. So it's definitely go time. Online today, we got Dr. Tyler Carr, Pamela Sherratt, Dr. Xiaowei Wu, Todd Hicks, and Dr. Dave Gardner with the first update of the season. Be aware, we'll probably keep these updates bi-weekly until we get towards the end of May, where we go into our weekly updates. Up first, Dr. Gardner, what have we got on the weed herbicide front?
All right, greetings everyone. So it might not have seemed like it this week, but March is actually running considerably above normal. The average in Columbus is 40 degrees and we're running 46 right now. And with the 70s that we're supposed to have this weekend, it'll probably end up being just as, if not slightly warmer than March of last year. And so if you remember when your crabgrass germinated last year, it's probably going to germinate at a pretty similar time. And so because of the above normal temperatures, I usually tell people apply most of your pre-emergence herbicides when you see forsythia in bloom or 2-inch soil temperatures about 50 degrees. Now, note that with the liquid formulation of dithiopyr and just the liquid formulation, that does have early post-emergence activity. So if you accidentally do have areas where you see crabgrass before you get your pre-emergence out, you can use the liquid dithiopyr on 1 to 2 leaf stage. But forsythia is definitely in bloom and has been for a couple of weeks. And actually, for that matter, at least here in Columbus, we've got both the star and the saucer magnolias in bloom too, which usually come a week or two after the forsythia. So it is definitely time. To be more specific, if you recall last year, I made mention of this site, gddtracker.msu.edu, and this is the map of the recommended application times for pre-emergence herbicides as of Wednesday of this week. And so the yellow shading is the early timing, green is optimum, and orange is late. And so note that we are right smack dab in the middle of what the growing degree tracker says is the optimal time for the application of pre-emergence herbicides. In my humble opinion, you can get away with applying during that late time, which is fortunate because given the forecast for the next 4 days, we're probably going to be at least parts of the state in that orange late region by early to middle of next week. A reminder also, when you put out those pre-emergence herbicides, because of all of the damage that we had to do the drought last year, if you have areas that are bare, that is not a good place to put down a pre-emergence herbicide if you do plan on overseeding this spring. I get those phone calls every year where somebody says, yeah, my guys accidentally put down a product and we want to do some seeding. How long do we have to wait? And usually that's 4 to 6, about 4 months. And the good news is that puts you right back into that August seeding window, which is when you're actually supposed to be seeding a lawn for optimal establishment. But for spring seeding, again, make sure that you avoid applying pre-emergence herbicides to those areas that you do plan on doing any seeding and renovation. For winter annual weeds that have become quite noticeable here in the last week, I think 2 years ago, like the hairy bittergrass at the research center, they were tiny little plants, and now they're about 6 inches in diameter and they're in full bloom. Any of these weeds, chickweed, henbit, purple dead nettle, if you want to apply those, remember it's kind of tricky because at this time of the year, especially on days that we have temperatures less than 70 degrees, a lot of the herbicides that you use that are amine formulations might not be so effective. And so make sure that you're using an ester formulation of that herbicide when, I don't know why my slides are advancing on their own, use an ester formulation of the herbicide in cooler weather, and that will give you better control of those winter annuals. There's also this product, Defender. The active is flurazulam. It's a wonderful active ingredient. It's just that, like a lot of our post broadleaf products, the spectrum of control is somewhat narrow. It's very good on dandelion, clover, chickweeds, and mustards, but hey, that's probably what you're going to be looking at for the next couple of weeks. Also, this one is really good in cool weather. So if you do have winter annuals, this is definitely a product to consider. And if you time the application right and you have dandelions, one of the neat things about this is that it will actually control the dandelions before they bloom. Sometimes when you use a phenoxy herbicide, you know how you spray it and then it starts growing and then it blooms before the herbicide actually kills it. This product does a pretty good job of making that not happen. So one to consider if you have a lot of winter annuals that you're dealing with. Now for the monocots that are not grasses, so onions and garlic, for example, the problem here is that the herbicide industry isn't trying real hard to control things like garlic and onions, for example. So there aren't really dedicated herbicides for those. Remember that those are ephemerals that start growing a little bit earlier than our grasses, and so they're very noticeable at this time of the year. 2,4-D has some activity, but I would invite you to check out the label for a sulfentrazone containing herbicide. That is a product that also happens to have some activity on those onion or garlic plants. In turf, you'll have no problem with it. In ornamental beds, you can also use sulfentrazone, not 2,4-D, but you can use sulfentrazone if you have those in your ornamental beds. But remember that sulfentrazone has to be used as a directed spray if you're trying to control them there. For all of those annoying faded patches that are either Bermuda grass or nimblewill, they're very visible at this time of the year, and you might be tempted to try to control them. But for the most part, dormant grasses are not real susceptible to herbicides, and so this isn't a good time to try to apply. But this is a good time to go mark those areas out. And after those grasses green up in May, you can start making those applications. Now, for the best results, you're probably looking at using glyphosate and a couple of applications in order to get rid of those. And again, just remember that that's not effective until after spring green up, which is going to be really not until the month of May when soil temperatures are consistently in the 70s. And that's what I have for today.
Dave, on the glyphosate, can you give us an update on availability?
Well, for the commercial folks, it should be easily available. For homeowners, that's a little bit trickier. It depends on the store that you shop at. They might have a stockpile of the original glyphosate containing formulations, but for the most part, they have switched to a non-selective product that is a mixture of herbicides, most commonly triclopyr and fluazafop, which is it that the fluazafop was originally marketed as fusilate. That's the grassy weed control, and then triclopyr is the broadleaf control. And then there's also a contact non-selective herbicide in that product as well. I'll talk more about that in future weeks, but there's some tricks with using that substitute versus glyphosate that I want to spend a little bit more time talking about in a future session.
Thank you, Dave. Todd Hicks, disease and destruction.
Morning, everyone. So far, so good this year. The good news is, as far as snow mold, our professional turf managers, sports turf golf, seems to have missed out on the snow mold bug this year. No complaints so far, even from the northern section of the states. The only actual complaints I'm getting on any snow mold at all are homeowners. They seem to may have got bit by the bug depending on their situation or not. But I have a feeling most of those will end up being okay and coming out of that. My cautionary statement so far for this year is we're going into April really soon. As Dave pointed out, March was at least 6 degrees warmer than normal. With April showers and some warm weather trends that are probably going to keep going, my big fear that's going to show up very quickly is leaf spot. You folks do a really good job of controlling dollar spot these days. There's so many good products out there, but a lot of the newer products don't do much for leaf spot, if anything at all. And the last 3 years, it's been the ones that's been biting people in the rear end a lot. Once you get leaf spot established, it's going to stay all year long. As you know, there are cool and warm season leaf spots. They switch back readily back and forth. Not only that, once you get leaf spot, it weakens your turf, which is already weak from last year's drought and horrible weather season we had. Dollar spot's going to ramp up right on top of leaf spot. So do yourself a favor, get something out in April and make sure, at least in the springtime, you're well covered for leaf spot before it takes hold. If you're managing some Poania, I'd make sure that I was spraying something out maybe towards the end of April for anthracnose. That's another one that seems to have crept back up the last 2 or 3 years. It seemed back 10, 15 years ago, it was one of the number one issues on golf courses, especially greens. That went away with a lot of great products that hit the market. And for some reason, it is now coming back. I think people got lackadaisical and they just didn't see it. We're putting more and more stress on our turf. We're getting more and more POA. And with our weather patterns turning warmer and people getting out quicker, it's putting more stress on that POA. And so anthracnose is showing up. And when it does, it usually comes in like wildfire. So those are my two cautionary statements. I think it's going to be warm. I think it's going to be wet for April. And with trying to open a golf course and get people on the course and adding that extra stress, I think leaf spot and anthracnose could sneak in and get you if you're not careful.
Thanks, Todd. Got a couple of follow-up questions on fungicide updates. Anything we want to talk about as far as use patterns with chlorothalonil?
No, so far, it's, Syngenta had the hearing and they're working on a new label, but nothing official has come out and nothing, as far as I know, that will affect chlorothalonil use this year.
All right. Thank you, sir. Following on from that, Pamela Sherratt.
Good morning, everybody. So I just have a quick update. I did my first extension visit of the season yesterday, and the grass is greening up. So the grass is greening up. There are some differences still, obviously. Kentucky bluegrass, especially some of those late winter varieties, haven't greened up yet. But the tall fescue and the perennial ryegrass is growing actively. So many of the Parks and Rec fields are opening up, if they haven't already, ready for a busy season. Last year, as we know, we had a horrible drought. And so the field that I visited yesterday, going into the season looking like this, season opens in 2 weeks. So we talked about a few things. We talked about how to get some seed established quickly. There are some great sports turf mixes, seed mixes out there for people. So speak to your seed supplier about that. But if speed is of the essence, obviously there's some great perennial ryegrass cultivars out there that will be up out of the ground, hard wearing, not great, as we know, with summer drought. And of course, turf grass pathologist's dream, Todd, with perennial ryegrass, because we get 12 diseases in Ohio and perennial ryegrass gets all of them. So but if speed is of the essence and you have a game opener coming up in 2 weeks, perennial ryegrass is the way to go there. And then we talked a little bit about sod also. You can sod, you can put sod out effectively, especially in very high use areas like gold mouths. And you can do that year round as long as the ground is not frozen. So that's kind of the golden rule of sod there. And then the challenge with this particular field was trying to keep the sod wet or moist while it establishes, because it didn't have irrigation. Irrigation is the key. Turfgrass is a plant. It needs water. So I think, especially after last year, if you don't have irrigation, even just a rain train, that should be a priority on these athletic fields, especially these high use athletic fields. They have to have irrigation. The grass will not grow without water. So that maybe, talk with your boosters, try and come up with a plan for irrigation. We also talked about top dressing. Top dressing is a huge topic, Ed, that I think I'd like to cover on its own one week. But we talked a little bit about where you find materials, because, unless you're around one of the major metropolitan areas of Ohio and you're out there, it's very difficult to source material. And then if you do source material that's in, say, for example, Columbus 2 hours ago, then you're dealing with transport costs. So how do you source materials? My best advice would be that you work with your local extension office. Ohio State has an extension office in your county. Work with your extension agent, your extension professional to locate those resources. You can obviously reach out to us through the Buckeye Turf email and website. And then also another resource, which I think is really helpful for people coming into the season, is to know that there is a chapter of the Sports Field Managers Association, the Ohio Sports Field Managers Association. We have a great group of people in that association right now. I just talked with the president again yesterday, and he offered again that, you know, these people are out there to help sports turf managers in the state. If you have issues, if you have a particular question, perhaps about a piece of equipment and how does that work, and it's something perhaps the turfgrass team, it's not in our wheelhouse. It's nice to know that we have the OSFMA group that can help with those types of answers, and they're more than willing to do that. They're working right now. The board is working right now to help a group establish a baseball field, renovate a baseball field in one of these hard to reach areas. So resources, obviously, Buckeye Turf going into the season, any one of us going into the season, OSFMA for the sports turf managers. And then very lastly, I do like this resource. If you're thinking about compost program, there's a website called findacomposter.com, and you put your zip code in there and it tells you where all your composting facilities are in your state. And so that's just an extra resource for people. But again, it's such a big topic. People are a little confused whether to put compost out, compost and sand, go on to a sand program. I think maybe going into the later on in the season, and certainly going into the fall season, we'll talk about that topic in greater detail.
Thank you, Pamela.
That's all I have, Ed. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Carr.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be back on this year. A lot of you have talked about how play is ramping up for golf and for sports turf. And there are common challenges that we face this time of year. While play is ramping up, grass really isn't growing the way we would like it to. It's not going to recover from traffic the way that we would hope, and the way it would be in a couple months into May and in the fall when temperatures are more conducive. So there are a couple of things that we deal with this time of year. One is lower temperatures. We're talking about how these are going to increase, though. And another is, and Todd alluded to this, is rain. And traffic and rainfall don't really mix too well. So I'm going to show a couple little figures that I think can be helpful in helping justify maybe rotating areas on an athletic field or limiting cart traffic in areas. One of them is this temperature-based model called growth potential. The theory on this is that cool season turf grasses grow at a maximum potential at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and warm season turf grass is at 88 degrees Fahrenheit. So you see that at the top of these figures where there's 100% at those different temperatures. This dashed line at 50% growth potential, that's considered the growing season for these grasses. And so you just take your average temperature, just for simplicity. Let's say your high is 70 and your low is 50. Your average temperature would be, you could use 60. And so just think about the weather that we're having, around Columbus or different parts of the state. Growth potential is currently much lower than 50%. Our average temperatures have been around, I believe, in the mid to upper 40s, even lower in some cases. So growth potential has been about 30 to 40% at most for some of our cool season grasses. And so it really, we see this out in the field. We know our grasses aren't really growing, but this can help you better understand and put a number to quantifying growth. It's not a perfect model by any means, but it's just another tool that we have. And then the other piece is soil moisture. When you add traffic to areas that are wet, they tend to deteriorate more rapidly. There was some work done on sports turf a couple years ago, and they just had 4 different soil moisture contents. We have your turf coverage on this vertical axis and number of traffic. So they just put a lot of simulated traffic. And I just want to point out that under the highest soil moisture content, turf coverage deteriorated very, very rapidly. And where we have cool temperatures, a lot of moisture, this is going to cause turf to deteriorate. And really, we have a long growing season going through October and sometimes into November. And if we end up putting too much traffic on these sites early in the season, we may not fully recover and may have trouble in the summer, and then may have to renovate these areas in the fall. So rotating traffic in areas, working with golf professionals or coaches, athletic directors, um, to help you implement some of these practices of keeping cart paths or keeping carts on paths or rotating high use areas on sports fields. These are all things that will be helpful going into the season and throughout the season. So that's what I have, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Carr. Okay, Dr. Wu. Insect.
Good morning, everyone. Apparently, we have experienced a harsh winter compared to the previous years. When I look at the historic climate data, looks like at least we are colder. We have a cold winter compared to the past 2 years, and that was potentially have impact on the past problems. According to our observations, is that that have actually impacted the flowering time, the flowering of a daffodil, and also for Fantasia has been 1 to 2 weeks behind compared to last year. So these pictures were taken actually early this week, and when I look at them this morning, they are both approaching full bloom. So that have some indications on the annual progress waiver activities. We have put out the monitoring traps before March 1st when the ground was still frozen, try to work it out. And when the weevils come out, so we can first say when they move out from the overwintering size. So these traps, linear pivot traps, are about 5 feet long. We set them between in the pathways between the overwintering sites and the shortcut turf. And so for these weevils, we have seen them this year first around March 14th in Columbus and Cincinnati area, which is actually 1 week later compared to last year. And also Barrington, we saw that last week as on March 21st. So the weather definitely have an impact on the insect populations, although the weather in March has greatly catch up when we look at the growing degree days. Earlier, Dr. Dave Gardner showed the growing degree days. That's based on the base temperature of 32 Fahrenheit. So for monitoring the past population, like in any progress waiver, currently we're using the base temperature of 50 Fahrenheit. So when look at the growing degree days, they seems like a catch up with last year's in March. So we have 1 March. But the previous cold conditions in January and February may still potentially have an impact. So although you may see them start to come out from your overwinter sites, but do not spray yet. I would say put a hold on the spray and wait until most of them come out. So when we look at the reproductive system or these weevils, most of them are still not developed yet. So they are not ready to lay eggs. Right now, they're moving out from the overwintering size, take some food and try to mate, but they're not ready to lay eggs yet. So I would say put a hold on the spray. There's no rush, especially the peripherals. We do not want to create resistance issues if you are doing repeated sprays of the same insecticide. And another thing I want to announce is that turf grass entomologists from several states, including Ohio, we are working together for a collaborative project to address the needs of turf stakeholders. So I will encourage you to participate in this survey. Here's a QR code. You can scan this QR code or go to the website, go.osu.edu/turfgrass and past and survey, and go to the survey, and that shows about the questions about your needs. So there are different sections like golf or lawns, parks, athletic fields, soil production. You can choose whichever applies to your category and just tell us about your needs. So that way we can do our research to actually solve your problem. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. A couple of things to wrap up. For growth regulators, it is prime time for Proxy Primo if you're going after seed heads. It's somewhat similar as far as the timing to pre-emerge herbicides. Soil temperatures in the Cleveland area at 2-inch depth on a modified green are actually getting close to that 50-degree mark. So we are definitely warming up. So you're going to start thinking about soil activity in that instance as well. Couple of things from the damage standpoint. Did see some images this week from a golf course in northern Ohio where they had roughly about 60 days of snow cover, and they had some pretty good vole damage. So if you notice lines running through your turf, where the thatch in the top of the canopy is basically being chewed off, and kind of tunneled, in all likelihood, that's going to be damage from voles. Now, it's not a regular occurrence here in Ohio, but it can happen, particularly where you have extended periods of snow cover. There is not going to be any miraculous recovery for that. That is not a spray magic juice on it and it suddenly turns green. That is grass seed and fill everything in. Can you do anything about the voles? No, you cannot. They're not something that are easily removed or eradicated. So it's one of those where some elbow grease is needed. One other thing is April 27th, the Columbus Turf Club have their fundraiser golf outing at Homestead Springs. If you want to get involved in that, make sure and look for their social media promotional pieces. It's out on the southeast side of Columbus. If you get the opportunity, worthwhile cause. Following up on that, there's one other event I want to knock out there on September 29th. The ATI scholarship outing will be up at Pine Hills in Northern Ohio. So hold the date. All right, folks, with that, we will leave it go. Dr. Wu, one question. You indicated there's no rush on a spray. We will not be back for 2 weeks. Is there a potential timeline in the 2 weeks where people might need to be concerned about a spray application?
That's a great question. We are actually about estimated to do the spray in about 2 weeks for our research trials targeting the adult stage. So right now, those weevils are not developed. Most of them are not reproductive developed yet, so they're not ready to next. There's no rush. We expect to, in about 2 weeks, when photosynthesis is about half gold, half green, we'll do the application.
So to further pinpoint that, because of geographical variation, where are your sites for the research located?
We have research sites at in Columbus area and also in Cincinnati area. Cincinnati is it's a bit ahead of us. So you need to watch out about the plant phenology is a good indicator. If you see photosynthesis is around half gold, half green, it's about time to do the application. And meanwhile, we are also doing soap flushing, which is put about 1 fluid ounce of the soap detergent and a mix, not dishwashing detergent with 1 gallon of water, and you pour that about 2 pints per square foot. You can split that in 2 applications, and in about a couple of minutes, they will come out. So that really is very helpful to help look at the populations over time. And that way you can see when is the peak activities that will help about the time of the spray.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will see everyone in 2 weeks. Dr. Carr, have you got the websites that you want to share for the screens for those people who are looking to look for information? One last thing I did forget, you may still see, because of the cool temperatures, high sunlight conditions we may run into, some purpling or segregation of the turf canopy. That is not disease or a phosphorus deficiency. That is just a physiological response. And patience, or ELAX, as somebody once famous said, it will green up and everything will display uniformity of color. So buckeyeturf.osu.edu, and then the various social media handles And if you have questions, buckeye.turf@osu.edu will come to the whole group. Thank you. We will talk to you all soon.